chapter 3 today. And just last thing we said was the concept of Tzivos Hashem, which is that we hold ourselves as these legions of God, which means we're standing strong. It reminds me basically, when were we called Tzivos Hashem? When we came out of Mitzrayim, which is like this Indian of Mesiras Nefesh. What's the really like the Mesiras Nefesh that sort of comes to mind? It's just in yesterday's Chumash, right? Parshas Bo, how we took the sheep of the Mitzrayim, and this was their God. We tied it to our bedposts, and they came in and said, "What are you doing?" We said, "We're going to kill your God in front of your face." Just like unapologetically, that's called Mesiras Nefesh, right? And it's like that is what it takes to bring that intensity out of ourselves in order to transform the darkness into light. This, we said, happened in the Mishkan. That's how we made like the sheker into the keresh. But primarily we said that when is the ultimate level of Mesiras Nefesh? It's not in the Mishkan, it's not in the first temple or the second temple. It's really the third temple, which represents Nitzchius, which is the idea of eternality. It's also from the word Netzach, which means we're going to win. We're pulling out that card of intense Mesiras Nefesh more than any other generation that ever existed, to the point that Moshe Rabbeinu was actually jealous of our generation because of this very thing. Okay, so that being said, what do we say that was? That pulls out the Otsar from heaven, the treasure house. And what is the treasure house? So that's chapter 15. Let's look at chapter 3 here. I'm saying it's chapter 15 of the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer, this year's chapter. What'd you say? Not only did they not, but the firstborn came and they're like, "What are you doing with these sheep?" And we said, "We're going to kill them when God kills all the firstborn." We said that right to their face. So instead of harming us, they ran back to tell Paro to let my people go. So this is the whole thing. The Rebbe has a huge, like, whole sugya. There's several sichas which are all mind-blowing on the topic of Shabbos Hagadol, which that Shabbos, it happened on Shabbos, and therefore forevermore it's called Shabbos Hagadol, and it represents like the most highest, it's more messianic, says the Rebbe, than Pesach. Because the reason it's called Shabbos Hagadol, says the Midrash, is because there's a Shabbos right next to it, which is not quite as gadol as it. What's the Shabbos right next to Shabbos Hagadol? Who knows? Pesach. Because Pesach is called Shabbos in the Torah. Mimachras HaShabbos, right? It says from the day after Shabbos, you should start counting 50 days. But it's not actually Shabbos, it's the first day of Pesach, right? It's the day after Pesach. You start counting. But it's called Shabbos. So Shabbos Hagadol is called Shabbos Hagadol because it's greater than Pesach. Pesach is the Messianic holiday. What's so great about Shabbos Hagadol is because the firstborn of Egypt, representing the strength of Egypt, the intensity of Egypt, they themselves were pushing Paro to let the people go, to the point that they actually made a war with their own people and killed many, many Egyptians before we even got to them because of this Mesiras Nefesh that we had. So it was a total transformation. So that really goes with the theme here. Anyway, Kedei levar inyan ha'otzer l'mayla. And should be a familiar topic. In order to explain what is this treasure house above, Maybe behemshech ha-maimer, he brings the Friedrich Rebbe in the continuation of the Maimer in chapter 12 as Divrei HaTikuni Zohar, the words of the Tikuni Zohar, where it says, hopefully you got this one down, there's the Orein Sof Lamayla Adin Kates V'Lamata Adin Tachlis. We know about this. The Orein Sof is infinite in two directions. Now in chapters 12, 13, and 14, he goes deep into the idea of explaining what does it mean the Orein Sof is infinitely low, which we've discussed. He knew Perek 15, the Perek Tesvav, in chapter 15, and he says in the brackets, Hu Perek HaShayach L'Shana Zu. This is the Perek which is connected with this year. Ki la'achrei shelamdu as esrim prakim shel hemshech b'meshech esrim hashanim harishonos. There was like sort of, it seems like he's like sort of proud of this accomplishment. He says, since we learned 20 chapters, right, of the hemshech over the last 20 years, Sha'az Naisa Indian the Ben Esrim Shana Roilim Kor, Lisa Velitem Benichse Aviv, and he kind of says that what is the advantage of the fact that we've already gone through 20 years? Because remember, this is now at 1985, he's going through it the second time. So he says, what's the advantage that we've already gone through the chapter once? Because 20 years is a big deal. Right, Noam? You're 20, right? So what do we say when you turn 20? I remember when you turn 20, there's an inyan of your halachic status changes. which means you are now roy limkor b'nichsei aviv. You now get the status that you're allowed to do business with your father's inheritance. When you're 19, you're still like a kid. You're not allowed to be given the rights to make these types of decisions. And the reason is because when you turn 20, 10 and 10, it's like your chokhmah and bina is b'shleimus. You like elevate to a certain state of perfection. In fact, Adam HaRishon was born as a 20-year-old. It's like the perfection of man. So he says, since we've already gone through the 20 years of the Maimer, we're not the same people we were before. So this time around, it's much more advanced, and we're fit to, so to speak, do business with our father's inheritance, which is kind of cool. He's talking about the inheritance of the king's hidden treasures. I see. So now we're learning it the second time, as it's known kaflayim l'tushia, and it going to be a doubled measure of salvation. This is all like sort of brackets. Shana zo hishnas hates vav b'pam habes, and this is the 15th year of the second time through. Okay, so basically, what does he say in chapter 15? Maschil ba'er ma'u inin lamayla adin kates. The Friedrich Rebbe starts to explain what does it mean that the Or Ein Sof goes infinitely high, and he also explains shezehu ha'otzer shelamayla, that the mashal that he has sort of been developing for the last 3 or 4 chapters about this treasure house that the king only shows at the time of war, etc. It happens to be that it's the part of the Or Ein Sof that's Lamayla Adin Kates. So we sort of got to the juicy part of the Maimer. The whole thing he's trying to explain opens up in chapter 15. Umevar bezeh, and he explains the kashem Or Ein Sof lamata matabis pashtus v'gilui, that just like the Or Ein Sof goes infinitely low in its expression of revelation, ad ein shir mispar klal, to no end and no number, kafishanis bar prakim hakodmin, as we've already explained in the previous chapters, and we also explained that we said over there that it means that the Or Ein Sof can be in the place of finite reality and be just as infinite and totally unharmed and undiminished. Fine. So he says, "Kamo kain hu Or Ein Sof lamayla adin kates." So too, the light that goes infinitely high. B'chinas helem ha'or, what this is characterized as actually a concealment of light, shu behelem achar helem, u'bechlalos u'b'ninat tzimtzum, which is the idea that it goes one level of concealment after the next, which we said is really the tzimtzum, as we explained at great length in the previous mimer. This is the idea of the or going in the wrong direction, so to speak, up and away, means it leaves in its presence an absence, the tzimtzum, but as we've been explaining, that absence is not an absence at all. It is actually the presence of an infinite light which can't be seen. Or Ein Sof lamayla mayla. Okay, everybody with me? Remember, this is all review upon review upon review. So now, Dalit. And it gets tricky. Bira Inyan, to explain, Hine af shebe'etz chaim, even though the Eitz Chaim, written here in the Holy City, Isa shatzimtzum harishon hu atzimtzum ba'Or Ein Sof, shamamali es kol hamatzius. He explains, the Arizal there explains, that the tzimtzum harishon, the first removal of all the light, is a tzimtzum in the Or Ein Sof. Which Or Ein Sof? We said the Or Ein Sof that's mamali es kol hamatzius, right? There was a sort of expression of light which was infinite in the would-be place of the world, and it filled the whole Metzias, and therefore there was no place to establish the worlds, because when the infinite light is there, it doesn't give rise for anything but God. And therefore, where did the Tzimtzum happen? Upon that light. Mikol, nevertheless, Isa b'Kabbalah v'huva b'Chassidus pamim nadirot, which is a very cool thing. And he gives you, if you want to be a little investigator, he gives you the resources on the bottom where, but he says it's brought in Kabbalah and it's brought in Chassidus in very rare places. Shegam lifnei hatzimtzum harishon haya inyan shel tzimtzum. He says, even if you remember from Ayin Beis, Chelek Aleph, Amud 415, then you probably came across this not too long ago. But this is a very rare conversation that's going to happen right here. And that is, even before the Tzimtzum Harishon, there was a Tzimtzum. What does it even mean? Who ever heard of such a thing? The Yuvanzeh, we have to understand this, al pi hayedua, based on what is known, the nos of lakach she'or hu be'ein aruch legabe ha'ma'or, that even though we know that light is what's called incomparable to the luminary, So in other words, you're going to have light coming off of a luminary. By definition, if it's coming off and expressing itself, it means it's gone through some kind of a tzimtzum to the point that it's incomparable to the source of light. And then the Rebbe says, this gets like very, very deep and exacting. So when we say the Or Ein Sof is incomparable to the Ma'or, right, to the luminary, what we're saying there is that not only is the Or Ein Sof incomparable to Hashem's Atzmus, which is for sure, but even to what we're calling the Ma'or, which is basically it is the Atzmus, but in the Atzmus itself, part of the Atzmus is that it can shine light. And since the Atzmus has an ability to shine light, that quality in the Atzmus has a special name called the Ma'or, the luminary. Now, the Atzmus itself, you can't call it a luminary, right? Because it's not just a luminary. It's not a luminary shines light. The Atzmus, who knows what it's going to do? Don't try and put boundaries that it's a light shiner. I don't even want to talk about what it is. It could be anything. But one of the things that it clearly does is called a light shiner. It's a luminary. And therefore, the Ma'or is not exactly the same thing as the Atzmus, because it's just an aspect of the Atzmus which serves as a luminary. And what we're saying is that the light of the Or Ein Sof that comes out of the Ma'or, it's not only Be'ein Aroch to the Atzmus, it's even Be'ein Aroch to the Ma'or in the Atzmus. Did anyone understand that?
Does automatically it seems so?
20%.
Does automatically it seems that happens because the Ma'or is shining light?
Yeah, we're going to say that. But did you understand what we're saying here? That the incomparability of the light is incomparable even to the Ma'or. And the Ma'or is not the whole Atzmus. It's the Ma'or Sheba Atzmus. It's the luminary quality that the Atzmus bears.
Is it actually Atzmus?
It is. In other words, it's not wrong to call the Atzmus the Ma'or sometimes. But if you say that it's only the Ma'or, then it's wrong. Right? But one of the qualities of Atzmus is that it has this thing called its ability to shine. At that level, it is a quality of the Atzmus. And what we're saying is that the Or Ein Sof that comes out of it is incomparable even to that quality of the Atzmus.
By calling it the Ma'or, we're just referring to the Or. It's from the light. It's not from the light.
It's the luminary. It's the thing which shines light.
Right, the Ma'or. Mia'or, from the light, no?
No.
Because I know what the Ma'or is.
No, Ma'or means luminary.
It's one word.
It's one word.
It's
Shtei Ma'oros HaGadolim. It says in the Torah, there's two great luminaries. The Ma'or Gadol, Ma'or Katon. Okay? Now, Hine Gam Ba'or Gufa. Now, that's clearly incomparable to the Ma'or. But even in the Or itself, when this light actually starts to get drawn out and express itself into the actual existence of light, not just a luminary, it's also incomparable. Forget the Ma'or. It's incomparable to the light inside the Ma'or before it comes out. So we've now established a bunch of levels just in this one line. You have the Atzmus. Inside the Atzmus, you have the quality of the luminary of the Atzmus, which is the Ma'or. Inside the Ma'or, you have light inside of there, which has not yet come out. And then you have light that actually shines, which is the Or Ein Sof. So what we're saying is that the Or Ein Sof is Be'ein Aroch, even to the light inside the Ma'or, certainly the Ma'or, and certainly the Atzmus itself. You getting this?
This is what I was trying to say.
I'm sure you were.
If you have Mem Or.
Don't start with Mem Or. I can't. You're confusing me.
You just said that.
No, I'm not. I'm literally not saying that. I'm saying this. You're saying this, and we're having a conversation.
Wait, can I just say one thing?
I guess so. Not sure.
There's light inside the Ma'or that hasn't yet come out.
Yeah.
That's what you just said, right?
That is.
So that's the Or inside the Ma'or.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. And the Mem is the reflective aspect, which indicates its aspect to shine.
No, but the Ma'or is not the light that's inside of the Ma'or.
No, the Or is the light which is inside the Ma'or.
Okay.
And the Ma'or,
but Ma'or is what? It means what? What are you saying?
The lighter.
The lighter.
The lighter.
In other words, the luminary?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought. Kamaimer Batanya.
Making the point that
You are making a point. Come here, You're giving a great point. Thank you. Okay, so we've got over here, we've got the atzmus, the ma'or, which is basically somewhat synonymous, but not exactly. And then you got the or that's inside of the ma'or, and then the light that actually shines when it comes out. And of course, that light that comes out is incomparable even to the light that's inside of the ma'or. You getting it so far, Shmuel? Okay. The Kamuva or Batanya, as explained in the Tanya, what's explained in the Tanya? That the light, which is, so to speak, inside, is an incomparable status to the light that's outside. It's like, he draws an analogy over there. If you would trace like a ray of light back into the sun, obviously it doesn't shine in any way, shape, or form in the same capacity or strength outside the sun as it does inside the sun. Inside the sun, it's still a ray of light. It's just a ray of light which is included inside of the ma'or. So even when it comes out, it's in comparison to how it is when it's inside, and that is not even the ma'or itself. It's just the light that's kalul in the ma'or. Umizeh muvan. From here, it's understood. So since the light which is before the tzimtzum, what light are we talking about that's before the tzimtzum right now? In all the lights that we just spoke about? The ispashtus ha'or. Right? The light which is before the tzimtzum is actually light which is shining, the last level of what we just described. Since that light is in a state of metzias or, it's actually come out and shining. And particularly if we add this little addition, which is that light is even what we're going to use in parentheses and some brackets to make sure we cage ourselves, but it is called shayach to the worlds. Now, is that light of the Or Ein Sof that's shining shayach to the worlds? Why would you say that it is? In other words, if you want to have worlds, what do you have to do with that light? Contract it. So how are we saying it's shayach to the worlds? Because this is understood also what it says in the Eitz Chaim, Sham, the kasher Or Ein Sof ha'imamali es makom ha'chalal, when the Or Ein Sof was filling the space of the void, lo hayav sharlios metzias olamos, therefore you could not have worlds. Shezem morasha agila the Or Ein Sof shayach lemetzias olamos, but often shall shlila al kopan, which means that this light, because he says when this light is shining, you can't have worlds. He already draws some kind of a line between them that it's shayach to the world. In what way is it shayach to the world? At very least, it's shayach to the world in a way of negation. In other words, it's not in any way shayach to the world, actually, but that's it, shayach to the world, that the world cannot have it. So that's already kind of gives it, we don't say, for example, by the atzmus, it's not shayach to the world because it's so not shayach to the world, we don't even mention them in the same sentence. But the Or Ein Sof, which is shining and not giving room for the world, that's its shaykhs to the world. That when it's there, the world can't be there. So its relationship with the world is that it's a way of negation, their relationship. So since it has at least some form of a relationship with the world, at least by way of negation, which means it's low. We're trying to say that its shaykhs to the world means it's on some kind of a lower status. Therefore, therefore, the manner in which it comes out from the light which was inside of the ma'or, hu ayde inyan shel tzimtzum. So, what have you just kind of understood here from this? Is that we always, this is really, really like a shocking thing because it also, it's not what seems like is going on when you read the Sfari. It sounds like before Hashem created the world, it was Hu Ushmo Bilvad. He and his name was there, which means he and his light was there. We are given a picture of God that the beginning is that he's already shining, right? It says before Hashem was Ma'atzi, the Olamos, there was the Or Elyon Apashit Mamali Kol Matzias, right? This is the beginning. The beginning is there's God and his light, and therefore there's no room for the worlds. And then they have a tzimtzum. So the tzimtzum comes after the expression of that light. That's why it says, right? There's such a contrast like this. Now, what we're saying is, hold on. That light did not just get there by itself. There must have been some kind of a tzimtzum which preceded the existence of that infinite light that's shining, because you can't get light to come out of the ma'or that's kalul inside in a way of be'ein aroch and suddenly shine into this void unless there was some kind of tzimtzum that preceded it. Because light can't just shine without a tzimtzum. So we've now just discovered there's a tzimtzum before the tzimtzum arishon. You follow? Shmuel? 20%? Okay.
Are we not going to run into an issue or we just keep going back?
What do you mean?
Like if we can just say that there was if there was light, there has to be a tzimtzum before, and at the beginning has to have been light, then we can just feel like we're just like a chicken.
I'm not saying there has to be we thought in the beginning there has to be light. Because that's how the Arizal explains to us the origin story. There's God and his name, which is basically the light is already shining, and therefore we're presented with a problem. You want to have the world, what are you going to do? So you have to start, you have to create a tzimtzum in order for there to be the world. So it sounds like the light basically preceded the tzimtzum, as far as we knew until now. Now it comes out, for that light to even get there, to come out of the ma'or and shine, it doesn't just come, it wasn't just there. There had to be a tzimtzum in order to get the light that was kalul in the ma'or to actually shine. So before it even got there, filling the whole space of the world, there was an activity operation first, which was a tzimtzum on that light that was kalul inside the ma'or.
Okay, and before that, there's just the atzmut.
Before that, there's the ma'or and then the atzmus. Because we're talking about the light that's kalul in the ma'or, that there was a tzimtzum on that light. Seemingly, just like you can't have a tzimtzum on the atzmus, you can't have a tzimtzum on the ma'or. You can only have a tzimtzum on light. But what we're now learning is that you can have a tzimtzum on light before it even comes out, in order for it to come out. Okay? Ubazeh yuvan, and with this we'll understand kavod kedushas admar tzemach tzedek. We can understand what the tzemach tzedek writes in Sefer HaMitzvah Shelo. Be'inyan habechinas sheba haya tzimtzum. Right? So he's now talking about the level upon which the tzimtzum took place. And he writes there, Ra'isi kisvei yad kodesh mori Rabbeinu Haggadol. From my teacher, the great Rabbi, he's talking about the altar Rabbi, Nishmaso Eden, and he says, Shekina lebechina zu b'shem yecholes. Right? So he said, and this is like basically the Rebbe's proof that such a thing takes place. This is one of those rare places in Chassidus where you'll find the idea of a tzimtzum before the tzimtzum. And how? Because the altar Rebbe writes that on that light, right, upon which the tzimtzum took place, he calls this, the name of that light, by the name Yecholes. Do you remember we had a whole long conversation about Yecholes? What was Yecholes? Right, which means it didn't come out yet, right? We said he has the ability to shine or to not shine. When he already exercises that ability to shine, it becomes the Or Ein Sof that's Lamata Mata. And if he exercises the ability to not shine, it becomes the Or Ein Sof that's Lamayla Mayla. Before he exercises any abilities, it's just called the Yecholes. And upon this thing that the Alter Rebbe calls the Yecholes is where he says that Tzimtzum happened. This is the level upon which the Tzimtzum took place. That's a level of light that hasn't come out yet. Right? And this is the Rebbe's proof, basically, that there is such a thing.
But only when it comes out as light.
No, there's something, it's light which is unexpressed before it comes out. It's still called light. It's not called the ma'or.
But the tzimtzum is only happening as soon as the echolies gets to become light.
No, that's the whole point he's trying to make here. That there's a tzimtzum on the yecholes.
What's the echol?
It's the or hakalul b'ma'or.
So what are you compressing there?
What he's trying to say is that it is light.
It's information. It's like spiritual information of potential. It's not light.
But if it potentially, if it potentially is, then fine. But if it isn't, if it goes in the potential of not being, then what's
still information?
No, it's lack. At that point, it's
Okay, let's try it again. On that level upon which the tzimtzum happened, the Tzemach Tzedek saw that his grandfather called this the Yecholes. Where did the tzimtzum happen? On the Yecholes. The Yecholes is not the expression of the light. Va'inyan bazeh the lechora seemingly hariyadu mavur b'makom acher. It's explained elsewhere. Shatzimtzum hayaba or shebechinas giloy. Yeah, what are you talking about? This is like crazy chiddush. Everywhere else it says that the tzimtzum happened on light that already shined, right? V'kamuva gam b'sefer mitzvah sham. Even the Tzemach Tzedek, while he's busy saying this crazy chiddush, he says like right on the same page the normal thing to say, which is that the tzimtzum happens on the light that shines. Shatzimtzum hayaba or shayama male es makom achala. Right. The tzimtzum took place on the light which filled the empty space. Right, and that's what enabled there to be an empty space. It was on the expressed light. Hainu lo ba'atzmus ha'or elabis pashtuso. Right, the normal thing we say is where did the tzimtzum happen? Not on the essence of the light, which is inside of the ma'or, but on the expansion and the expression of the light. That's why you contract it, because you basically bring it back up into its root. How can we say that we're going to name this level upon which the tzimtzum happened? B'shem Yecholes. How can we call it the Yecholes? It's like you just like totally reared us off to the rails. V'al pi anal yesh lomar shekavanaso hi gam le'inyan atzimtzum hanal shlifnei atzimtzum harishon, because the Tzemach Tzedek was talking about, was quoting the Alter Rebbe, who was talking about this rare breed of an idea that you never heard before, unless you read that page of Ayin Beis and remembered it, where he's talking about the tzimtzum that took place before the tzimtzum harishon. It's cool. It's like we're like seeing like rare godliness over here. Yeah.
Is the tzimtzum on the Yecholes, is that a tzimtzum on the unexpressed light, or is it predated?
It's the tzimtzum on the unexpressed light. It means that before, like, let's just, I'll paint you a picture, right? There's a light that comes out of the sun. And if it comes out of the sun, that very light is inside the sun. But there, you don't call it light, because it's not anything other than the ma'or. But it's there. For sure it's there, because if it comes out, it had to come in from inside. Now, usually we talk about the tzimtzum being all the light that's coming out of the sun. It should go back up inside the sun. Now we're talking about the light that's inside the sun is going to have a tzimtzum on it. And it must, because if it shines, how did it get out of here? How did it get out of the sun? If it didn't have a tzimtzum enabling it to go out of the sun, because anything which is be'ein aroch, right, has to be expressed only by way of tzimtzum. What do we generally say, right? That Hashem wanted to create the kav and give the life to the world, but because the kav was so incomparably nothing compared to the Or Ein Sof, he had to remove the Or Ein Sof in order to enable us to see the kav. So in order to bring out revelation, you have to make a tzimtzum first. So what we're saying now is the same thing is true inside of this Yecholes. In order to bring out the revelation of the Hispashtus Ha'or, which is the shining of the light, there had to happen a tzimtzum on the Yecholes in order to enable that to happen. So in other words, he's talking about the tzimtzum before the tzimtzum. Hainu l'tenuas tzimtzum shebaor hakalu. He all of a sudden he adds a word, which because we're getting into dicey area. He says tenuas tzimtzum, like a motion towards tzimtzum, which happens in the light included in the ma'or. Shal yado haisam shachas giloy ha'or, and through that tzimtzum that happened in that spot, enabled the shining of the light. In other words, now you can have light that's called light that's shining before the tzimtzum. Right? Normally what we say, the light before the tzimtzum only got there because of this tzimtzum that happened first. And that's why the Alter Rebbe called this light the Yecholes, the light that the tzimtzum happened on. He calls it the Yecholes. Because the light which is inside of the luminary, kefishu b'nimshal l'mayla, as we're explaining it above, hu rak b'chinas Yecholes. In other words, like the mashal that we said, this light of the sun inside of the sun, it's called the Yecholes, but kamavur sham baruch, as it's explained there at length. It's a little nugget to take with you to the Baba Sali. Ask the Baba Sali more about it when you get there, and tell me your answers when you come home. Have a safe trip. Here, pass it all back in.
I'm struggling a bit. The way I would be able to understand it, let me know if this makes sense to you.